The history of the mixing in my family is the thing that I'm super interested in. This is an affidavit by Philip Yates,
right.
And it says that his father, George Edward Yates, was born of London, England in about 1870 to English parents. So he is an Englishman, a white man, who's found himself here in Ghana.
I have a number of passenger lists that allow us to see him traveling between Britain and Africa. Let's have a look together.
The first record Karina's found is for travel to South Africa.
So this is from 1902. Although it just says Cape, we know that they're in Cape Town, South Africa.
Right. Okay.
Here are the names of the passengers, and I think you'll
Yates.
see a name that
There
looks
we go.
familiar there.
Yeah. Well, it's Yates. Is that an M?
It's a W.
A W?
Yes.
Okay.
You're right. It's G.W. Yates. In your affidavit, we have George Edward Yates. We can track a G.W. or a George William Yates from South Africa to Secondie, going back and forth. There is no George Edward Yates, so we believe that the affidavit is incorrect.
Okay. So this George W. Yates was him, and he was George W.
Yeah,
as opposed to George E.
Exactly.
Does that say that he's married?
Yes.
So he was married in England before he came to Ghana?
Yes, so in 1902 he's married, and he appears to be traveling with his wife.
Wow.
And there's something else below.
That's not children, is it?
Yes.
Oh my God.
They have a 1-year-old son. Let's have a look at the next one. It shows us your great-grandfather traveling in April 1907 to Secondie. The important thing about this particular document is that it shows him arriving by himself in the Gold Coast.
George Yates followed the typical pattern for British men working in the gold mining industry. Wives and children often went to South Africa, but not to the Gold Coast. The danger from malaria and tropical diseases earned it the nickname White Man's Grave. So most British men travelled here alone.
Would it be fair to say that it was almost expected of sort of Englishmen to find a new wife when they came to West Africa for long periods of time?
Yeah. For sure, it was not uncommon for European men to have relationships with African women in the colony. This had been a very long tradition.
George and his British colleagues were contracted for long stints in the colony, interspersed with visits to their families at home. Karina has tracked George Yates in England as well.
Let's have a look at a census from 1911.
George William Yates, Ethel Rose Yates. So what's this?
This shows the family in Middlesex.
Wow. So you've not only got my great-grandfather, George William Yates, but his wife, Ethel Rose, and he's got children. He's got 2 sons and 2 daughters, William, Rose, Douglas, and another Ethel Jr. Look at that.
This allows us to know that even after he resettled his family back in England and came to Secondie, that he continued to go back and forth between the Gold Coast and Middlesex and continued to have children with his white wife.
So would this be the complete family in the UK?
No, there's more to come.
Oh my God. What is wrong with these Yates men? They just can't stop.
Prolific.
Yeah.
I think if we look at the affidavit,
yes,
we see that your grandfather, Harry, was born in Brumasi on November 15th, 1915.
Yeah.
So what I want to show you is an excerpt from the Gold Coast Leader. It's in very fine print, so I'll just point it out to you. Our good paymaster, Yates, was among those on the sick list last week. Mr. George W. Yates, our chief accountant here, is to leave for England on the 13th of next month. So this is June 1915, and so he leaves in July 1915.
Yeah, with the imminent birth of his son.
Right.
It's funny he got sick around that time, isn't it?
Well, you might be surprised to see something. Let's look at this.
Okay, September 1915. This is him arriving in Liverpool.
Nope. This is him leaving Liverpool,
okay.
going to West Africa.
Right. So he's come back.
He comes back before his son is born.
Right.
So
That's
you're
good to
right
know.
that he fell ill and he left.
It was almost a
during the
little too
pregnancy.
convenient.
Right. But I think that puts a little bit of a different spin on the idea that
Slightly.
he would have been like a man who impregnated a woman and then left. It says to me that he intended to be in the Gold Coast when his son was born.
Reggie has heard that George got ill again when his son Harry was very young and left the Gold Coast never to return.
He also, according to the oral history again from JB, he left Dorothy with some gold dust to look after herself and to look after her son. So it's quite tough for me. I'm kind of torn as to his motives.
What I see is an itinerant father, not just to Harry, but to all of his children.
Yeah.
And it was the nature of the work that he was engaged in, that the mining industry was a global industry, and men had to go where they could get a lucrative contract. But I think that we can say that for the time that he was here, he had a meaningful relationship with Dorothy, cared for her, and he cared for his son. After he leaves the Gold Coast, he doesn't settle permanently in England. He actually takes a position in Nigeria.
He doesn't start another family in Nigeria, does he?
Not that we know of. And Nigeria wasn't his last stop in his mining career.
Is that him? Death of Mr. G.W. Yates, that's
Yes.
him?
That is your great-grandfather.
Wow.
He leaves the Gold Coast in 1917, and he dies in 1925.
Shortly after, yeah, 1925. The news of the death of Mr. George William Yates, age 44. Wow. The greater part of the past 18 years he spent abroad fulfilling appointments with gold, silver, platinum and tin mining companies, first in South Africa, then the Gold Coast, Nigeria and Colombia, South America. Wow. This is a massively well-travelled man.
Yes.
He's been a while in New York. Wow. On his journey home, he contracted a chill, which was followed by pneumonia. He reached England and passed away on December 22nd. Wow. That's a lot to take in. That's crazy. I now know what he looks like.
What did you imagine he looked like?
I don't know. I genuinely had absolutely nothing in my head with my grandfather, Harry, being so sort of racially ambiguous, you know. In some photos he looks quite mixed race, in other photos he looks very European.
So if we put them together...
Wow. Yeah, he's definitely his father's son, isn't he?
Yeah.
Sort of squinty little eyes. Some might say that's carried on through the family. Wow. Where do you think that left Harry, being here in Ghana without a connection to his father and his father's lineage?
I think Harry was absorbed into his mother's family.
The parallels in this story between Harry and myself are a little scary, because that's essentially what's happened to me in the UK. You know, my relationship with my father is distant. I know that at quite a young age I felt not abandoned, but I felt that there wasn't a connection to my father's side and that history of European men.
This is just so fascinating to me.
It's even more fascinating to me because it's my family.
Yeah. yeah, of course.
And there's so much more to this story than I thought. It's incredible. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
George Yates is someone I was a little undecided on, because on face value it's a wealthy white man who's come to an African country with a family at home and started another family, and he's gone. But the intricacies of that story sort of say a lot more about him as a man. I don't agree with having a couple of families that don't know about each other, But I think the fact that he wanted to take Harry back to the UK throws into question what his priorities were, how much he loved his son. So my feelings on my great-grandfather have changed.